Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. Let me tell you, the dopamine, it's flowing.
I am damn excited. Damn excited.
That's a terrible drum roll.
Oh! Boy, how you doing, man? Patrick.
Will Sterling.
Yeah.
Super Bowl champion, two-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast on this Tuesday edition. I am Sterling Holmes, Josh Brisco. Follow him on the X at JB Brisco, myself at Homestretch KC. Brisco, it feels good to be back.
It feels good to be back with you as well. Last week, Richard and I just carried this weight, but I'm honestly, genuinely glad to see you on my computer screen right now because I didn't have power for 18 hours following that storm yesterday afternoon that turned into storms overnight and all that. So I know this show has been plagued by technical difficulties from my angle time and time again. It was the whole block. It was a lot of the city yesterday, but I got the power. I made some calls and I called the mayor and I said, listen here, Mr. Mayor, I know how much you love Tuesdays with Sterling. I gotta have power by 3:00 or else it's not happening this week. And he said he'd make some calls and I'm on air with you now. So it seems like it worked.
I thought Mr. Mayor would answer and say, you can call me John.
You know, Richard, I know you're not mic'd up to hop in here now, but I just want you to know that I loved what we did last week. And that was maybe my favorite episode of Tuesdays with Sterling ever. Second, actually, because that episode that I did with Matt Connor was excellent.
So I'm top 3. I'm on the podium, baby.
By default. Yeah.
That wasn't bad. I've had better.
How was your trip?
Wasn't bad.
That was
good,
your
dude.
trip. I did accuse you of being the drunkest man in America with the tumbleweed situation.
Yeah, I had a few beverages there.
Yeah.
No.
Did you? You really? Did you?
So I was actually fine. We walked back, and we were walking back, and I saw.
I think you may have tumbled back.
I tumbled back. Rumbling, bumbling, stumbling back, and I saw that, and the first one I took was blurry, and I go, this is even funnier that it's blurry. I go, this makes it even better. So, yeah, I've heard of tumbleweeds. I knew they were real, but I don't know if I've ever seen one in person outside of, watching Looney Tunes when I was younger, so it was
Which I would argue doesn't count for in person.
Yeah, I'd probably say that doesn't count for in person, but it counts for something. Yeah, and it was nice to see a tumbleweed in person. So I thought I have to take a picture with it. Yeah. We went to LA, Burbank. That was Lone Pine for the Film History Museum right here.
Oh, really?
They film a whole bunch of historic events, movies, and such.
I'm not trying to blow up your spot, but do you have any examples of ones that they have? If not, I'm not gonna roast you for it. I don't know.
Like a whole bunch of John Wayne movies back in the day, like Bonanza TV shows, all Westerns, but you also see a lot now of car commercials will actually do it out there. So technically the Alabama Hills, which very far away from Alabama, in California.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were in California, and then you said the Alabama Hills, and I went, well, maybe this was a Florida trip. I think you just said LA and Burbank. I think that was on the other side.
They went to Bama and just moved the mountains and hills over there. Actually,
they had the faith of a mustard seed.
Yeah,
that joke would have killed on Only Weird Games.
Mount Whitney was right there, the tallest mountain in the continental 48 states. Congruent.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that was.
So we were right by there.
Mountain. You didn't go up it though.
No, we did not go up it. I was ill prepared in sandals.
I was ill prepared for sandals for a little walkabout this morning, and I now have a Pokemon BrandAid on my foot. And if you're asking, Gengar, just a blind pull out of the box, good pull.
And he is 30. All right, let's talk some football. Talking football.
Well, my foot hurts regardless.
Talking football.
Sorry, I don't have beer Band-Aids.
I got Bush Light Band-Aids, baby.
Sorry, I don't have a Bush Light Band-Aid for you, man. If I did.
AC Beer Co. Arrowhead Lager Band-Aid. Grow up.
Oh.
Yeah.
I feel
Hey,
like we're
Steve.
ready for some, Band-Aid's a brand name. We're ready for some Band-Aid innovation, I think. BrandAid. Stop the show. If you have a brand that wants to take your intellectual property to the next level, me and Sterling Holmes and our new company, BrandAid, which I own 85% of, Sterling actually only owns 5%, and Richard has the last 10%, but Sterling insists on being one of the faces of it, so this is the way we made it work. We will get your brand logo on bandages that then you can give out first aid kits. What a great brand association to have in a time of need. I scraped my knee. Oh dear, I need to bandage this up with a you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a nice ice cold KC Beer Co. beer on that knee, and I'm going to cover it with a KC Beer Co. bandage, a brandage.
Put one on my mustache. I will put my mustache on your boo-boo.
Yes, finally. I've been asking for years.
All right, football. I was talking with Adam Tyer today, and we had a little bit of a.
That man's got it. We got to let him retire soon, right?
Yeah, because I'm disagreeing. He's like, now I have this guy disagreeing with me about this. It wasn't even really much of a disagreement, but my initial question was,
I'm with Tyer.
I go, how bad does Jaylon Moore have to play to see Josh Simmons this year? And he goes, well, I don't view it that way. I view it as Josh Simmons is option A. And if he's healthy and ready to go, Josh Simmons is the guy. And I was like, that is interesting. Like, I guess all accounts, Josh Simmons has been, a lot healthier than we all expected, right? So that redshirt year, because of injury, seems to be thrown out the window now.
Yeah.
What did you take away when I tell you that right there? Because I was pretty surprised that he viewed it as Josh Simmons option A and Jaylon Moore is almost the contingency.
I'm also a little bit surprised by that, but as I have said many times in many platforms, I love Adam Tyer. I have people who didn't get to know him very well over his time covering this team, which continues on for a bit longer. You don't know how funny and also genuinely kind Adam Tyer is. So I will always go to bat for him 100 times out of 100. Dude's the man. I also really listen when he says something that surprises me like that. Because, man, I'll tell you what Adam has to gain by making something up right here? Not a damn thing. I think that's coming from somewhere that is probably at least laced with truth. I would say that that's a nice phrase. I'm going to keep that in my bag for later. Sorry, honey. It was laced with truth. It tested positive for truth in the statement.
Truth was methamphetamine, but yes, it was laced with it. It was laced with it.
The thing about that's fascinating is, and this is a little bit kind of a vibe check thing, and I'll give another hat tip to another great dude on the beat, Matt Derrick, and he was talking to Nick Jacobs about on their podcast about those rookie mini camps, and one of their little takeaways. I wasn't there, and Nate Taylor wasn't there because he just had a baby. Well, I mean his wife had the baby, but he was involved. Beginning and end of the process is my understanding. The thing from Matt and Nick was, you know what? It's really early, and this doesn't necessarily tell you what his training camp status is going to be. But Matt and Nick said they were both surprised by how much Josh Simmons did at rookie minicamp. And the thing that I have pieced together is I'm kind of with Tyer on saying, at least there's a huge asterisk here, but if Josh Simmons is healthy throughout training camp, and especially if he is day one doing everything at camp, then I think it's a legit battle at that point. And in a lot of ways, you would want, if you're the Chiefs, you would want Josh Simmons to win that. So maybe a tie goes to the rookie. That's not usually how you think about it, because the rookie is the less known quantity. But Jaylon Moore is on a 2-year deal. Josh Simmons, really the Chiefs, if things go well, they've got 6 or 7 years of control over him. Like 6 is kind of is probably the most realistic, of 4 years, 5th year option, franchise tag. And if it's great, they'll figure all that out before they get there. But he's younger. You have a lot more team control. So I am open to the idea that there are 3 NFL caliber starting tackles. And if Josh Simmons is healthy and if he is looking somewhat dominant in camp early on, then I think Jaylon Moore is as big of a problem for Jawan Taylor as he was for Josh Simmons. And you just say, hey, we've got 3 guys who we think can beat. We've got 3 players making $45 million. We need 2 starting tackles and a swing tackle. Can you make that happen? We can talk more about the process that got the Chiefs here, but I would consider it a good thing if Josh Simmons is starting in week 1. To that extent, I think I'm perfectly aligned with Tyer. I don't think it has to be a Jaylon Moore disaster for Josh Simmons to be starting. I almost think it almost doesn't really matter what Jaylon Moore does to me, because I think if Josh Simmons is healthy and looks great, it's his job. If he's not healthy and doesn't look ready, it's Jaylon Moore's job. Then I think right tackle maybe gets a little spicy.
So I want to talk a little bit more about this. I want to talk about the AFC West. I want to talk about some X factors in the wide receiver room. But speaking of factors, make it 1. We don't need the plural. Factor. Because you should make this your best season yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. Eating well has never been this easy. Just heat up and enjoy, giving you more time to do what you want. Get outside instead of prepping and cooking indoors. Factor meals will arrive fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any active lifestyle. With 45 weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, whole bunch more. They power your day with satisfying breakfasts and on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. So it's very easy to savor more this spring with Factor meals. Pack in the flavor with none of the fuss. I love Factor. I actually just ordered some right now before the show. I'm a huge fan of Factor. I've got it a few times before as well. Always so delicious. It's great. You know, Brisco, when you worked in radio, all that stuff, you're going there, you don't have a long break. I can make a Factor meal that is delicious in 2 minutes. If we have a 5-minute break, that gives me 35 seconds to run down the hallway, use the fridge that you left to pick up the Factor meal out of the fridge. It's still there. Yeah! And then I go to the microwave that is in the break room. Lebo might be using it, but I go, Lebo, I got to get back on air, so give me 2 minutes right here. He takes his chicken breast out of the microwave. I put my Factor meal in for 2 minutes. I take it out. I eat very fast. Jason Anderson goes, wow, Sterling, you sure ate very fast. I go, yes, I did, because it was easy with Factor. None of the fuss. All the deliciousness. Honestly, I am a huge fan of Factor. It is really, really damn good. Way easier if you're working, way easier if you like good food and you don't want to bust out and make your house burn down like I almost do sometimes when I cook. And not only that, it really tastes good. It's not one of those ones where it's just a frozen meal. It's frozen. It's healthy. I'll eat it. I thought it was going to be that. And then I tried it and I go, damn, this is better than anything I could make fresh, guaranteed. I'm like, babe, I'm sorry, I love you, but I think this is better than anything you could make fresh, guaranteed. Don't tell my wife that, but it really is good.
Can I just give it? Can I give you a little extra? Can I give the good folks at Factor a little extra here?
Yes.
Not only have I step by step taken your path to heating a Factor meal in that microwave, maybe at Lebo's expense. Just the timeliness of, I would never ask Lebo to move his. I would just go get it later. But I have done that step by step. I have also, hi Factor, my name is Joshua Brisco, and my address is available upon request. And I have also a long history with Factor. It was also incredibly helpful because you get the nutrition facts there. For me, I'm like, okay, how many grams of carbs are in this? That's just really helpful for me on all the stuff that I have to manage because of the diabetes. But to your point, it's delicious and way faster than anything. Like, it's tastier than any other microwave meal, and it's more convenient than any other good meal. It's really like they really nailed their Venn diagram. The thing that they're selling, they are fabulous at.
And if you want to try what we are talking about, you can get
promo
started
code Josh Brisco 20.
Kick rocks, Brisco. That would be a really good code. But you can get started at factormeals.com/Arrowhead50 off. Use code Arrowhead50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code Arrowhead50 off at factormeals.com/Arrowhead50 off for 50% off plus free shipping.
If you use promo code Brisco, they actually charge you 50% more and double for shipping. So you don't do that until I tell you here that we've got like a code live.
That's how they do the math. The math. Let's get back into the offensive line. I like this question from Patrick. Well, then for the money is what he's saying. Would you want to put Jaylon Moore at left guard then? If you're sitting here going, all right, well, Juwan's going to still be the right tackle for this year. The contract's not great, but the play itself is fine. We know what we have there. We're leaving Jaylon at right tackle. Let's say Josh Simmons wins the battle. Josh Simmons is your left tackle. So now you have a very expensive swing tackle on the books, which not the worst thing in the world, by the way. But if that's the case, do you think the Chiefs would or should consider putting Jaylon Moore at left guard?
I don't think that's likely. I do think it's possible. And the distinction there, it seems like a thin line, but the Chiefs always talk about like putting out their best five, right? And you say, well, we're going to just figure out our configuration and get our best 5-man lineup out there. Now, that result has not always been a positive one. Sometimes it has Joe Thuney and Mike Caliendo on the field, and you're like, are you sure that's your best five in this configuration? But I do think, and I don't know, man. I don't think it's very likely that Juwan Taylor's playing left guard either. But I think if Josh Simmons wins your left tackle job, Jaylon Moore is under contract to essentially be your right tackle in 2026. That's pretty much that feels kind of hand in glove to me. So I suppose you could say that Jaylon Moore is going to be a very highly paid left guard over the next 2 seasons if that spot made sense. I am still inclined to say the most likely outcome is that you have 3 tackles who play 2 tackle spots. And I would say right now, I think Josh Simmons is still narrowly the least likely of those 3 tackles to have a starting spot in week 1, just because of all of the asterisks and the ifs and the injury of it all. But I think that you also end up going into an NFL season where you expect Jaylon Moore's missed some time and Juwan Taylor's been coming off an injury. I think you expect to lose one of your tackles for some part of the season, a game or 2 here or there, even a few snaps here or there. So I think the Chiefs are begging Kingsley to work out at guard because, again, you talk about the team control and still a major deal you're expecting for Trey Smith very soon. I don't think it's likely. I don't think they're just going to say Juwan Taylor or Jaylon Moore are highly paid. They've got to start. I don't think that will happen, but I do think there's a world where it doesn't look good for Kingsley and you figure out which one of those veterans would you rather kick inside. I don't know if that's, I think that, more in line with your original question, Stu, I think that would say a lot about Kingsley, more so than a great camp from Josh Simmons would say a lot about Jaylon Moore, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Adam Marshall says, what about Simmons at right tackle, which he played at San Diego State? If Juwan Taylor doesn't get his act together, I think it's possible too. If maybe he's not 100% ready to start the season, you want Jaylon Moore there, then Josh Simmons is your swing tackle. A little difficult for a rookie to try and learn both tackle spots, at least try to have that. But I get where you're coming from. I think it's tough too, because I think we all expect Jaylon Moore to be the right tackle in 2026, barring Josh Simmons looking real bad in 25, and then maybe Jaylon Moore just stays at left tackle. Yeah. So again, this is why I don't have any issue with the contract for Jaylon Moore or bringing him in. The process makes sense, because if Josh Simmons wasn't there when they drafted, oh my gosh, would the Chiefs be screwed? Right. So I've seen a lot of people on Twitter talk about how, well, that's just a really highly paid. What a bad move by Veach. You could have used that money elsewhere. Well, with the information that was given, that was a smart, astute move. They didn't sign Dan Moore to that $80+ million contract. Like, I actually think that when you break it down, this makes the most sense for the Chiefs and what they had actually done. So, no, I don't have an issue with the process that Veach went out and did this offseason, which, quite frankly, I didn't have a major issue with the one he did last year, even though it didn't work. Sometimes you can have a good process and the results don't follow, but I think this offseason in particular on the offensive line has been a fairly good process. Just wanted to throw that out there. Before we move on and talk wide receivers in AFC West, you want one more thing?
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth on the process thing. I just think that's exactly right. I think a world where Josh Simmons just gets drafted at 25 and the Chiefs starting left tackle is like it's Kingsley Wanye Morris and we're talking about Donovan Smith and DJ Humphries again. Like, that would have felt like an absolute bungling. You never want to have $20 million going to a backup, right? That's not It's not the way you want your money to spend, but it would be very, very, very different if it was Dan Moore or even like Ronnie Stanley. If he would have hit free agency, I think the Chiefs would have backed up the truck for him, and they probably would have just been out on Josh Simmons at that point. Although maybe they say, hey, he's still there. He's still there at the end of the first round, 31, move back to 32. We got Ronnie Stanley as a long-term answer, and then Simmons is going to redshirt behind Juwan Taylor, and we'll figure that out when we get there. But ultimately, yeah, it's kind of like the wide receiver position last year, or the inverse of it, maybe. Deep into the season, there was a lot of people, this wide receiver room stinks. It didn't get any better than the year before. And how did they not fix this? Well, they did. Everybody got hurt. In this case, they were prepared now, and they are prepared now for someone to get hurt, and the tackle position should still be better. A serious injury to one of your starters at tackle would still leave this group in a better spot it was in than last season.
Yeah. Joe Thuney signed a extension with the Bears, 2-year, $35 million, $17.5 million AAV, which is just tacked on to this year's contract, which is $16 million. So $51 million over the next 3 years is what it breaks down to. And I posed this question to Tyer, and I think this is interesting because I was pretty adamant before this. This is kind of a similar deal, what I thought Joe Thuney was going to get, by the way. And this is what I talked about. I said, you probably still have 3 great years left of Joe Thuney. Okay. Are those 3 years, which is probably going to be cheaper than Trey Smith, what do you take? Everyone kept talking about how much younger Trey Smith is, which is true. I don't disagree. But what I was saying was, okay, but for a 3-year stretch right here, 3 years is still a decently long time. And if Trey Smith signed a 5-year contract or a 4-year contract, he might only see 3 years of it, right?
Yep.
So I'm sitting here going, well, who's going to be better over those 3 years, and especially at a certain price? I was team actually keep Joe Thuney and trade Trey Smith. One, you may be able to get more for Trey Smith. Again, I'm not Brett Veach. I've not brought any rings to Kansas City. I brought 1 ring when my wife.
Yeah.
But like, you get what I'm saying here. I understand. Veach knows way more than me, but I was pretty adamant on. I think I would have kept Joe Thuney at a cheaper contract, which we find out is gonna be. And now we're in the Trey Smith territory of he only has a franchise tag right now. There's no rumblings of the extension. It's been all quiet on the right guard front. So I don't know, man. I don't want to say I feel validated and vindicated because we'll obviously find out. They have to play the next 3 years. Maybe Joe Thuney gets injured or completely regresses. But I guess when I find that and see that come out, I go, I think I nailed that. And that's why I'm a little nervous about moving on from Joe and still with the unknowns with Trey.
I think if the Chiefs would have signed Joe Thuney to this extension, there would not have been a single Chiefs fan who would have been bummed about it. And I think if anybody's now looking at that going, oh man, thank God they got out of the way of that Joe Thuney extension, I think it's gymnastics, right? And I don't see anybody doing that, to be fair. Like, I'm making up a straw man. I think everybody looks at that and goes, yeah, that's really, really reasonable for Joe Thuney. And picking Trey Smith over Joe Thuney in a vacuum is also reasonable because of the age and what you think the trajectory is going to be. But to your point, the duration of the deal and the cost means it's not in a vacuum. Also, even in the amount of things that and the type of things that an offense is going to ask you to do as a guard. So yeah, the thing I would love to know that we're probably never going to know, what was the best trade offer they got for Trey Smith? Did somebody offer him a second in last year's draft? I bet they didn't. But he's going to get paid. I'm throwing a dart. This isn't a report. $25 million per year, something in that category. And I like to try to do it in a way that makes it a little more concrete. You're talking about, would you rather have Trey Smith this year? This is year by year, which is, again, not always how it works. Would you rather have Trey Smith or Joe Thuney and Charles Omenihu? That's even like last year's Charles Omenihu number, not even this year's necessarily. Would you rather have Trey Smith or Joe Thuney, and for the next 3 years, Leo Chanel, who's going to have an extension coming up, whose number is going to be weird? I look at this with a bit of hesitance, I think, similar to you, where I don't think the Chiefs are making a catastrophic mistake by keeping and extending Trey Smith. But when you're talking about the margins, I think I would have taken the Joe Thuney door over the Trey Smith one, assuming a better return, but probably not an elite one, spending less money, but still quite a bit. And you're getting the younger player over the older player. Again, we're both fully aware of their ages, but I'm with you there. Where it just, I look at that contract and I think that makes a ton of sense for Chicago. I think it would have made sense for the Chiefs. I wonder what Chicago would have given up for Trey Smith.
That's another good call as well. What would that have looked like? Again,
and I
Chiefs,
still think it would have been a disappointing return. That's still my guess.
100%. It may have been a third, right? I don't think it was going to be anything drastic, but still, point remains. Either way, the Chiefs weren't in the worst situation because they at least had one of those two guys to fall back on, even if it is for a year. With Trey on the franchise tag, it's still not the worst case. It's better than having none of those guys, right? Having both those guys is better than having none of those guys. All right, let's talk about the wide receivers now. I find it a little interesting that Hollywood Brown is almost going under the radar now. Like it feels like Hollywood is not talked about. I'm not surprised he came back. I'm not surprised the Chiefs wanted him back. Maybe I'm a little surprised that he came back on the deal that he did, but also maybe I shouldn't be because of the injuries yet again that he has sustained. But it felt like he was really effective and efficient when given the opportunity with health late in the year. Like Mahomes looked his way early and often in games, especially the last couple of the regular season. I don't know. I guess I'm pretty thrilled that Hollywood Brown's coming back, and I feel like not many folk have. It's a lot of Royals talk, and is he wide receiver 3 now? And something like Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, but I think Hollywood Brown might be like, again, it's early, it's May 20th, but the X factor I'm picking that helps this offense get its mojo back from the.
It's Juju even.
Oh, it's Juju back. Son of a, right there.
I am with you on all of that. And I'm trying to decide how hot I could make this take to give you here in mid-May to try to figure out, what do I have in the chamber for you here? I think there is a reasonable chance that Marquise Hollywood Brown is second on the Chiefs in receiving yards this year.
Wow.
Behind Brashard Smith. That's a joke. That part was a joke. Barely. I think that's right there. I'm expecting 12 games from Rashee Rice. So that taints the pool a little bit, right? If it's injury or suspension, I'm just keeping my expectations that he's not there the first 4 weeks of the season, whatever, we'll see where he ends up on that. But I think Xavier Worthy, I don't know. Maybe I'm remembering the one good thing from the Super Bowl, 2, I guess, because I enjoyed the halftime show. But maybe I'm really trying to just really grasp onto Xavier. I didn't enjoy it at the time as much as I would have, but of the 2 good things of the Super Bowl were Kendrick and Xavier Worthy, and very little else.
Yeah, I'm okay. You can have the halftime show. You can have that one.
Thanks, man. I wasn't asking your permission anyway. So maybe I'm really trying to latch on to Xavier Worthy touchdown to cut the lead to 55. Maybe I'm just in that headspace, but I think Xavier Worthy has a gear that nobody else on this team has. But I think Rashee Rice is the meat and potatoes in a lot of ways. He could still beat some flashy meat and potatoes, but where he's doing some more of that Travis Kelce mid-range stuff. Travis Kelce's doing less of that himself. But I think I'm just about as excited about Hollywood as I was this time last year. I'm not surprised that nationally that hasn't come back around yet, and maybe it will in training camp, and maybe the way the Chiefs talk about him will be different. But you are out of the public eye for a year. Hollywood already being kind of a guy who was in a fringe conversation all the time anyway of how good or useful is he? He's an NFL player, but in what role? And now you get taken out of the picture for a year, and when you do return in the playoffs, it felt like there were opportunities, but he didn't get a ton of looks. Even when Mahomes did look for him, this was here in training camp, right? You still have this. I also think that he has become underrated and under discussed at this point. I wonder if, here's my hope, I guess. is that, especially if Rice is still working through injury stuff, I hope it's super, super, super obvious in St. Joe that Hollywood is like the top veteran receiver in this group. Xavier Worthy is trying to get to another level, and Rashee Rice is probably just trying to get back to where he was pre-injury last year.
Yeah. All right, AFC West breakdown. I want to end with the AFC West breakdown of this offseason because AFC West is difficult now. Yeah. This is no longer you get 2 wins from the Raiders, you get 2 wins from the Broncos. You have an easy one against the Chargers, and you might get one when you play AFC West, like Arrowhead West out there in LA. Now you're playing in Brazil, which I don't like, which I don't need to get into yet again. But you have the Chargers who realized, hey, we were good last year when we were able to run the ball with J.K. Dobbins. What if we drafted a guy who's explosive, efficient, and can have that next level, and also bring in a really good veteran in Najee Harris, really solid veteran? Well, okay, and what if we bring in Mekhi Becton to help out with the interior offensive line, because the tackles are great, but we need a new guy on the interior. Okay, so we do that. What if we draft a wide receiver to help out, because Quentin Johnson hasn't been what we thought he was going to be. Ladd McConkey has hit. But what if we bring in a guy like Trey Harris, who was really, really talented and solid at Ole Miss? Like, I liked a lot of what the Chargers did. I think defensively, they're going to have some questions, and maybe questions aren't always a bad thing. But, Khalil Mack a year older, Derwin James a year older. I like they brought in that cornerback from Washington, St. Juicy, even as just like a depth piece. There's a lot of questions about what the Chargers defense might look like, but overall, I think the Chargers are a good team, and I haven't really believed the national media hype on the Chargers for years and years and years now, and they're pretty quiet, it feels like, overall. It's all been about the Broncos, but I think the Chargers are a pretty salty team this year. Again, I think the Chiefs win the AFC West, of course, but sticking with the Chargers here first and foremost, what do you think of their offseason, Brisco?
I said last offseason that I felt like they were doing all the right things, but they were probably an offseason away from being an offseason away, right? And that's, I think, where we're at now. I did, while you were doing kind of the rundown, I did have to pull up the depth chart, and because I was thinking, who's wide receiver 2? Because that does feel like, or even just like target 2 for Justin Herbert. That feels like the biggest question. You said they drafted Trey Harris, and that's a rookie question, which can be Ladd McConkey, and it can be Quentin Johnston. So you've got plenty of room for interpretation on how those guys are going to actually develop. But it is impossible for me to consider arguing against the idea that the Chargers have the right coach and the right quarterback. And if you have, and maybe if I start putting numbers on it, it's going to start making all this a little more heated. But they're one of very few teams who I think have a top 10 head coach and a top 10 quarterback. I don't know exactly. I don't have a list in my head entirely. I don't know exactly how multiplicative that power is. Their roster, I think, the roster feels healthier now than it was last year. Maybe that was kind of pulling up some of the weeds and you damaged some of the turf on the way. But you have a top 10 quarterback, top 10 head coach, and a roster that seems to be moving in the right direction. I think they're worthy of all the respect that you give to a team that hasn't pulled it off yet. Like, I don't that's not even sarcastic, like, season champs. They deserve all of the hype of a team who hasn't yet proven it. And they're very near the top of my list in that category.
Yeah. Broncos had a couple of interesting draft picks overall. RJ Harvey in the second round, running back, felt like a reach, but again, they're going to try and go run heavy, and they need a running back. Barron, cornerback from Texas. I likened them today on air. I said that they are the Royals of the NFL, where defensively they're going to be incredible. They're not going to give it many points, baseball, many runs. They might not score much, but they're just going to win 13-10. They're going to win games 17-13. I think the Broncos defense is going to be elite, maybe bordering on top 3 in the NFL this year. Offensively, I think they're fine. Wide receivers just aren't great overall. Running backs, a lot of question marks still. Bo Nix, year 2, we'll find out. It seems like a lot of quarterbacks have that sophomore slump. I don't think Bo Nix is bad, but I think Sean Payton's still really, really good and can get a lot out of Bo. I still have a lot of questions offensively about the Broncos, but defensively, they're going to have a really high floor.
My question for the Broncos for you would be, how many offensive weapons scare you? And I think, frankly, I think Courtland Sutton, at least watching from the Chiefs' perspective, Courtland Sutton has earned that nod, absolutely. And then it is a lot of questions and a lot of unknowns and asking Bo Nix to take another step. And so I am coming in with, it's going to be funny when we get to the Raiders, because like comparing and contrasting the Broncos and Raiders, a little bit of a spoiler alert here for you, I guess. I would take the Raiders quarterback coach combo over the Broncos quarterback coach combo almost instantly. Like I feel relatively good about that. Maybe I'm buying the Pete Carroll vibe shift, and I'll take Geno over Bo Nix. The contracts muck it all up. But if you're just talking about the guys who are there right now, I would go with the Raiders. But that Broncos defense is legit, and so I think you're asking Bo Nix to be a point guard. And like just a decent point guard who doesn't turn the ball over, who finds his guys. The problem is I don't know if they have enough scorers to, now I'm taking us to the basketball metaphor. I don't know if there are enough shooters. I don't know if there are enough scorers on this offense. It is a little bit, and I know this means I have an incredibly short memory, but it's a little bit hard for me to imagine Bo Nix and the Broncos out there going blow for blow with a team firing offensively. Their defense is going to make it harder for you to fire off offensively, though. And again, like the Chiefs have not been the team hitting their offensive stride perfectly to make this a blowout game. So the thesis of all of this being the AFC West has gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. The Broncos are another example of that, even if my skepticism remains around the offense and Nix and maybe a teeny bit of Sean Payton. But that might be a vibes thing too.
Yeah, if you want the best comp, I think if you want to go NBA, then it would be the 04 Pace or 04 Pistons would hopefully, if you're a Broncos guy, that's what you would hope for. Is we're just gonna make this muddy, we're gonna ugly it up. We got Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, we got some dudes, Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton, Chauncey Billups, and Chauncey Billups was big shot. He was gonna make the big shot, which you would have to have Bo Nix make the big shot, the big throws. Again,
and if he can do that twice a game, he's a top 15 quarterback. Like, because that's hard.
Yeah. Again, I think they're the highest floor of the other three teams in the AFC West. Right. Yeah. I'm still going off the Chiefs one. So yeah, but I think floor wise, Broncos probably have the highest floor. I don't know about the ceiling because again, offensively, I just don't see it. Final one in the AFC West, the Raiders. Again, another team that I think this was the biggest overhaul maybe of any team in the NFL. And I hate saying this. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think they got it right.
Yeah.
I think they got it right because I got fooled. I talked to a lot of Raiders fans and some media last year, and I had talked about Antonio Pierce, and they almost had me buying into Pierce as far as the Raiders mentality. We're going to get back that Raiders mentality. We're going to, all the dumb stuff that he said. And we got the recipe and they're like, this is the Raiders that we know and love, the villains almost, if you will. Yeah, that didn't work. You also have to be talented. There was no talent on that roster. And it seemed like the players eventually found that message to be stale. Wasn't going to work. So you bring in Pete Carroll, who does still have some of that rah stuff that we're going to run it down your throat. Except for when it's on goal line and you might pass with Russell Wilson. But still, he loves to run the football, defense heavy, all that stuff. Pete Carroll might only be there for 3 years. But the Raiders don't need to even win a playoff game. The Raiders just need to get back to relevancy. They were on a sinking ship, and they kept saying, no, our boat's not sinking, yours is. And they're just going down, down, down into the water. And they're like, well, let's start this captain. Or how about this captain, Aiden O'Connell? Or let's start this guy now. And you end up going 4-13. So what they did is, we got to bail water. We don't have to get all the way to the other coast, but we at least have to get afloat. Let's try and get back afloat. So they bring in Geno Smith and Pete Carroll, and they draft Ashton Genty. Brock Bowers is maybe now the best tight end in football. Hate saying it, but probably is. I really liked what the Raiders did this offseason, and I just never thought I would say that, being alive, the Raiders made smart moves.
Yeah, they're in the place that the Chargers were last offseason for me, where it's like, man, you made some like big hacks here, and the very least, I respect the process, and I think that you have made wise choices. And as long as Pete Carroll doesn't have a full email server of racism that comes out and sneaks out into the public eye at some point, he should do what they wanted John Gruden to do there. And by the way, it seems like Pete Carroll's clean on that front. Like that's the other thing with the Pete Carroll rah-rah versus an Antonio Pierce rah-rah, or a John Gruden, I'm the man, versus Pete Carroll's I'm the man. Pete Carroll has earned it and done it at both levels, similar to Harbaugh. He was that guy at the college level. There was a great story. I cannot remember where it was published, but if you're just curious of a USC era profile from like 20 years ago, Google Pete Carroll USC profile. And the headline was, it was like 25 things I learned in my day with Pete Carroll not taking notes. Something kind of like that. It was such an interesting way of just like viewing him as a person and understanding the way that he seems to make people feel. That interpersonal thing is a degree that's beyond ball, and it's beyond rah-rah, right? Like there is an interpersonal connection that I think you want to have in a respected professional relationship that way, that he was given out, as far as I could tell, at the college level before those guys were explicitly professionals. You're bringing professionalism to this. With that being said, I don't think Geno Smith is going to win anything with the Raiders, if I had to guess right now, right? Like, I don't think that they're probably not going to make a playoff. They're not going to make the playoffs this year. They're probably not going to make the playoffs next year, year 3 of it. Who knows? But Geno Smith is serious. He is a grown-up quarterback who I don't have a constantly running top 10 list, but he has weeks where he is one of the best quarterbacks in football, where he is one of the most exciting quarterbacks in football. And overall, he's a guy that you're not like a different play style than Alex Smith, but he's a guy who you're comfortable having captain your audience, your offense. That means a lot for a team that has not had that guy since Rich Gannon. I don't know. Like maybe I'm missing somebody, and no disrespect to our man Gardner Minshew, but it feels like the Raiders have actual answers at coach and quarterback. And now they're in that place where the Raiders or the Chargers were last year. It's like, I see what you're building here now, and it makes sense. And if Pete Carroll hands it off to a coordinator in a few years, or whatever the plan is there, I feel like they're pointed in the right direction for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah. A lot of offseason talk to get to later on. We don't need to get into all of the AFC West in even more detail, but yeah, I like what Lauren Shank says. Tom Brady had the fortune of playing a weak division for most of his career. Mahomes' path is just more difficult. I think right now we can start saying that. I think the past couple of years, it's been pretty easy in the AFC West. When he first came in, it was difficult, right? I think it's fair to say when he first came in, it was difficult, and then it got pretty easy. Number 10 in a row is going to make it pretty difficult. This year is going to be not the same as the previous few, but I don't think it matters. Chiefs are going to find a way to get it done. Last year, I think we're going to look back on, and even a decade, and say, how the hell did they make it that far? How did they go to the third straight Super Bowl? How did they go 15-2, really 15-1 with the amount of injuries sustained, with the issues that team had? If you want to take a look at what maybe Coach of the Year deserves, or what it looks like, last year may have been the perfect example of what Coach of the Year really looked like.
Maybe we start that now this year, just so we're not the only ones talking about it in week 14. Like, does anyone want to give Andy Reid an award? Like, I feel like maybe we need to plant that seed now.
So that's where I'm at. And it's going to be a damn good year, Brisco. A damn good year. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us, talking with us, having fun with us. Hopefully you enjoyed me finding a tumbleweed and the show when I was gone with just Brisco. Apparently I just got ripped on for about a half hour, so that's always fun.
That's entirely true.
I didn't get ripped on for a half hour straight? Just like 20 minutes?
Not for a half hour. Yeah, I would say it was a tight 10. It was very funny.
Everyone has a tight 10 to make fun of me. Appreciate it. Thank you. Give us a like or review wherever you get your podcast. Again, Apple reviews. Read those all the time. Really appreciate when you guys write nice reviews. It does mean a lot. Mean ones, okay. I don't like mean ones, but I'll probably still read them for constructive criticism. That's
you
okay.
Can give constructive criticism underneath 5 stars. Like, if you like this show enough to have listened to this point, and you're like, honestly, it's a 4-star show, but I know it would make it a 5-star show, leave a 5-star review and then give your constructive criticism under that.
Like that.
Don't
Kelly
drag
did.
down our ratings.
Kelly did. The show started off very stupid. We don't care about Pokemon Band-Aids. Kelly, don't blame me.
Kelly, we gave you 40 straight minutes of hard to Chiefs stuff after that. It's a 5-minute tax that sometimes you pay at the beginning of an audio program where if the hosts like each other, sometimes they will talk about their lives. I don't make the rules. I just play by them.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for watching, Kelly.
This was fun. I'm glad to be back. Until next time, for Brisco, I am Sterling Holmes.
Want to see my foot?
I don't. You have to charge for that. That's a different show. That's not a YouTube show. That's fans only, pal. Fans
the Arrowhead
only.
Addict Patreon about to get spicy.
Discord about to get after it, baby.
Dude,
Who wants to
Pokemon
see
Band-Aid.
Brisco's toe? Till next time, we're out.